The great chamber stretched before them like a cathedral of stars. Taman stood in the observation gallery, watching as thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the council hall. He had never seen so many different species in one place. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few existed as clouds of gas contained in transparent suits. But today, everyone's attention focused on the crystalline figures standing in the center of the chamber. The Velthari looked like living sculptures made from glass and light. Their bodies shimmered with internal colors that shifted when they moved. Taman had read that they could manipulate electromagnetic fields with just a thought, making them the finest engineers in known space. Every ship, every station, every piece of advanced technology in the galaxy had probably been touched by Velthari expertise at some point. Solvera stood at the front of the Velthari group. She was their eldest, her crystalline form etched with patterns that marked her age and wisdom. Her voice came through the translator as clear and calm as still water, even though Taimin could see the faint trembling in her structure that betrayed her fear. "We did not commit these crimes," Solvera said. "My people have served this galaxy for thousands of years. We have built your homes, powered your ships, and kept your systems running. Why would we destroy what we spent lifetimes creating?" The chief arbiter, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like rough stone, looked down at her without visible emotion. "The evidence speaks clearly. At each site of sabotage, we detected your energy signatures. 12 systems failed. Thousands died. The pattern is undeniable." Krivex, a young Velthari standing beside Solvera, stepped forward despite the elder's warning gesture. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Please, you must investigate further. Those signatures could be replicated, faked. Give us time to prove our innocence." Time? Another council member, a being made entirely of black metal, leaned forward. "Time while more systems fail? While more innocents die? We cannot take that risk." Tamin felt his hands clench into fists. He was only an observer here, a junior diplomat from Earth. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago, and they were still considered newcomers, barely worth noticing. But everything he was watching felt wrong. The trial had lasted only 3 days. The evidence was entirely circumstantial, and now they were talking about punishment before anyone had actually proven guilt. The voting began. Species after species declared their position. One by one, the lights above the council chamber turned red. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Tamin watched Solvera's internal light dim with each vote. Beside her, young Krivex was shaking so hard that rainbow patterns scattered across his crystalline surface. When the final vote was tallied, the result was overwhelming. The chief arbiter's voice boomed through the chamber. "By the authority of the Galactic Council, the Velthari species is found guilty of sabotage and mass murder. The sentence is exile. You have 30 cycles to leave your homeworld. No species shall grant you asylum, under penalty of immediate sanctions and trade embargo. You will be relocated to the barren world of Kreshtar 7, where you will remain under observation." Solvera's voice when she spoke was barely a whisper. "That world has no electromagnetic fields. We need them to survive, to reproduce, to exist as we are. That is not exile. That is death." "That is justice," the chief arbiter replied. "This council is adjourned." The chamber erupted in noise as delegates began to leave. Taman stood frozen, watching as the Velthari were escorted away by armed guards. He saw the way other species avoided looking at them, how quickly the gallery cleared as if exile might be contagious. He pulled out his communication device and sent an urgent message to Earth. His fingers trembled as he typed. He included everything he had witnessed, everything that felt wrong about this trial. He sent it directly to the Colonial Administration with a priority flag. 3 days later, Taman was back on the observation deck when the response came. He had spent those days watching as the galaxy moved on, as if condemning an entire species was just another day's work. Trade continued. Ships came and went. No one seemed troubled by what had happened. His device chimed. The message was short but made his heart race. "Proposal approved. Extend offer of asylum. Full citizenship status. We will not abandon them." Tamin read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. Earth was going to help. They were actually going to stand up to the entire Galactic Council for a species they barely knew. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was political suicide. It was exactly the right thing to do. He immediately requested an emergency meeting with Solvera. Getting permission took another 2 days of bureaucratic nightmares, but eventually, he found himself in a small room facing the Velthari elder and young Krivex. "I bring an offer from Earth," Taman said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "We know the Council has forbidden asylum. We know there will be consequences. But humanity would like to offer you shelter. We have 3 colony worlds with strong electromagnetic fields. You would have full citizenship, protection, and the freedom to live as you choose." Solvera was silent for a long moment. Her internal light pulsed with colors Taman had never seen before. "Why?" she finally asked. "Your species is young in galactic terms. You have much to lose. Why would you risk everything for us?" Taman thought about that question. He thought about all the political briefings that had warned against getting involved. He thought about the trade deals Earth would lose, the allies who would turn away, the danger of standing alone. Then he thought about watching an entire species being condemned without real proof, and he knew the answer was simple. "Because it's wrong," he said. "What they did to you is wrong, and if we stand by and do nothing, if we let politics and fear guide us instead of what's right, then what's the point of being part of this galactic community at all?" Krivex's light brightened suddenly. "We accept," he said quickly before Solvera could respond. The elder turned to look at him and the young Velthari straightened. "We must accept. They're offering us life, not death, hope, not despair." Solvera's gaze returned to Taman. "You understand the galaxy will punish you for this?" "We understand," Taman replied. "We're doing it anyway." For the first time since the trial, Solvera's internal light grew bright and warm. "Then we accept your offer, humans of Earth, and we will remember this kindness for all our generations to come." Ambassador Hyarin stood before the assembled Earth Colonial Administration, watching faces from across the solar system flicker on dozens of screens. Some looked worried, others looked angry. None of them looked happy about what she was about to propose. "We all know what the Council decided," she began, keeping her voice steady. "We also know what will happen if we go through with this asylum offer. The Drath Sovereignty has already sent 3 messages threatening trade embargoes. The Cathari Union is talking about pulling their merchants from Earth orbit. We could lose access to advanced medical technology, rare minerals, and defensive systems we've come to rely on. Then why are we even discussing this?" Director Park's voice came through sharp and clear. "We're talking about economic collapse. Maybe worse. And for what? A species we barely know?" Hyarin pulled up the holographic display. Images of the Velthari homeworld appeared, showing crystal spires that reached into the clouds, cities that glowed with internal light, gardens where crystalline flowers grew in geometric patterns. Then she showed the images of Kreshtar 7, the world where the Council wanted to exile them. It was gray, dead, and lifeless. "This is what we're discussing," Hyarin said quietly, "sending 47,000 people to a slow death or standing up for what's right. Yes, there will be consequences. But I've read Earth's history. I know what happened when people stood by and did nothing while others were persecuted. I know what happened when convenience mattered more than conscience. Do we really want to be that species?" The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. Then Admiral Sangwoo's voice cut through. "I've been running combat simulations. If the Drath or anyone else decides to make this a military issue, we're outgunned. Our fleet is good, but we're still building. We might not win." "Might not?" someone else asked. "Might not," Sangwoo confirmed. "But I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying we need to be realistic about the risks." More silence. Then Director Park spoke again, and this time her voice was different, softer. "My grandmother survived the wars. She told me stories about people who helped when everyone else turned away. She said those people were what kept humanity human." She paused. "I vote yes. We offer asylum." One by one the votes came in. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Earth would stand with the Velthari, consequences and all. 2 weeks later, Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of the research vessel Dauntless, now refitted as a transport ship. Around her, dozens of other human vessels gathered in orbit above Velthara Prime. They weren't military ships, just cargo haulers, colony transports, and research vessels, whatever Earth could spare. "This is really happening," her first officer said, staring at the planet below. The crystal spires were visible even from orbit, catching the sunlight and scattering it into rainbow patterns across the atmosphere. "Yes," Jiwan replied. "It really is. The communication came through from the planet's surface. It was Solvera's voice, but there was something in it that Jiwan had never heard before. Not just gratitude, but something deeper. Relief, maybe. Or hope. Captain Jiwan, we are ready to begin evacuation. But I must ask one final time. Are you certain? The galaxy will not forgive this easily. Jiwan thought about her daughter back on Earth, about the life she had built, about everything that might be lost. Then she thought about what it would mean to turn away now, to tell these people that humanity's word meant nothing when the cost got too high. We're certain, she said. Come on up. We're taking you home. The evacuation took 6 days. Jiwan watched as Velthari families carried what little they could onto human ships. They moved slowly, touching the crystal walls of their ancient cities one last time. Some of the older ones sang, if you could call it that. It was more like a vibration that made the air shimmer, a farewell to the world they were leaving behind. Krivex was one of the last to board. Jiwan met him at the airlock. His light had dimmed since the trial, but there was still determination in the way he held himself. I was born in the tallest spire, he said, looking back at the planet. My family has lived there for 300 generations, and now it goes dark. I'm sorry, Jiwan said, and meant it. Don't be. Krivex turned to face her, and his light brightened a little. You're giving us a future. That's more than anyone else was willing to do. Back on Earth, Ambassador Hyren was dealing with the consequences. The messages had started coming in as soon as the first transport left Velthara Prime. The Drath sovereignty made good on their threat, immediately pulling all trade agreements. The Cathari Union followed suit. 3 other species severed diplomatic relations entirely. Within a week, Earth's economy took a hit that made the stock markets crash. Rare minerals that humans needed for advanced technology were suddenly unavailable. Medical supplies that came from off-world dried up. And everywhere people were asking the same question. Was it worth it? Hyren stood before the Earth Council, facing down angry representatives from every nation and colony. I know you're scared, she said. I know this is hard, but history will remember what we did here, not just Earth's history, galactic history. We were given a choice between comfort and conscience, and we chose conscience. That means something. It means we're alone, someone shouted from the back. Cut off from the galaxy we worked 50 years to join. We're not alone, Hyren replied. We have the Velthari, and more importantly, we have our integrity. That's not nothing. The first Velthari ships arrived at Haven Colony 3 weeks after leaving their homeworld. Diane was waiting at the landing site, bouncing with barely contained excitement. She was a xenobiologist who had studied the Velthari from afar for years. And now they were here, real and alive and needing help. When Solvera emerged from the transport, Dayan stepped forward with a translator device. Welcome to Haven, she said. We've prepared settlements near the electromagnetic fields you need. We've tried to make them comfortable, but if there's anything you need, anything at all, just ask. Solvera looked around at the waiting humans, at the temporary structures they had built, at the flags flying that showed both Earth's symbol and a new one created for the Velthari. Her light pulsed with emotion. You've done more than give us shelter, Solvera said. You've given us dignity. The council treated us like criminals to be disposed of. You treat us like people. That's because you are people, Dayan replied simply. And people help people. That's all there is to it. Over the next few months, more Velthari arrived. 47,000 in total spread across 3 colonies. And slowly, carefully, humans and Velthari began to learn about each other. They shared meals, though the Velthari didn't eat as humans did. They shared stories. They shared hopes. And in quiet rooms on both Earth and Haven, some people began to wonder, what if this wasn't a disaster? What if this was the beginning of something new? 6 months had passed since the Velthari arrived on Haven Colony, and Dong-hyun couldn't believe what he was seeing on his computer screen. The power efficiency readings had to be wrong. They just had to be. Nothing should be able to generate that much energy with that little waste. Is this real? He asked Krivex, who stood beside him in the engineering lab. The young Velthari's crystalline form reflected the light from the monitors, creating dancing patterns on the walls. It's real, Krivex confirmed. When we route the power through our crystal matrices and you combine it with your fusion technology, the systems work together in ways neither of us expected. It's 4 times more efficient than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Dong-hyun sat back in his chair, mind racing. Do you know what this means? We could power entire cities with a fraction of the resources. Ships could travel twice as far on the same fuel. This changes everything. Yes, Krivek said quietly. It does, maybe that's why we're here. Not just because you saved us, but because together we can build something neither of us could build alone. Across the colony, Min Seo stood in front of her classroom and looked at the students. Half were human children, half were young Velthari. It had been her idea to create a mixed school, and the colonial administration had been skeptical. How do you teach species that learn completely differently? But Min Seo believed that if they were going to live together, they needed to grow up together. Today we're learning about energy transfer, she said, pulling up a holographic display.
Can anyone tell me how electricity moves through a conductor?
A human boy raised his hand. It's the flow of electrons through a material that allows them to pass. Good, Min Seo nodded. And who can tell me how the Velthari move energy? A young Velthari, her crystalline form small and bright, spoke up. Her name was impossible for humans to pronounce properly, so she went by Crystal. We manipulate the electromagnetic fields directly. We don't need conductors because we become the conductor. Excellent, Min Seo smiled. Now what if we combined both methods? What could we create? The children began talking excitedly, human and Velthari voices mixing together. Min Seo watched them work in mixed groups, sharing ideas that neither species would have thought of alone. This was the future, she thought. Not separation, but cooperation. Admiral Sang-woo stood in the command center of Earth's Defense Headquarters, watching the holographic display of human space. Red markers indicated Drath patrol ships that had been getting closer to the borders. They hadn't crossed yet, but the message was clear. The Drath were not happy about humanity's choice. Solvera entered the command center, her crystalline form seeming out of place among the military equipment. But Sang-woo had requested her presence for a reason. Thank you for coming, he said. I need to ask you about something. Our shield technology has always been adequate, but not great. We rely on energy barriers that drain power quickly and can be overwhelmed with sustained fire. But I've been reading about Velthari capabilities, and I think there might be a way to improve our defenses. Solvera moved closer to the display. What did you have in mind? Your people can manipulate electromagnetic fields. Our shields are essentially electromagnetic barriers. What if you could help us control them more precisely? Make them stronger where they need to be, weaker where they don't, adapting in real time to incoming fire? Solvera's internal light pulsed with interest. It's possible. More than possible. We could create shields that regenerate faster than they can be damaged. But it would require close cooperation between our people and yours. Good, Sang-woo said, because I think we're going to need them soon. In New Seattle, another colony where the Velthari had settled, Ji-hoon sat in his small apartment with a Velthari elder named Velsun. Ji-hoon was a musician, and he had been curious about how the Velthari experienced sound. Play something, Velsun encouraged. Let me feel it. Ji-hoon picked up his violin and began to play. It was a simple melody, one he had written years ago. But as he played, he watched Velsun's reaction. The Velthari's entire form began to resonate with the music, colors shifting and flowing in patterns that matched the notes. It's beautiful, Velsun said when Ji-hoon finished. We don't hear the way you do, but we feel vibrations in ways you can't imagine. Every note creates patterns inside us. It's like the music becomes part of our structure. Could you show me? Ji-hoon asked. Velsun began to hum, though it wasn't really humming. It was a vibration that made the air shimmer, that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ji-hoon felt it in his bones, in his chest, in the deepest parts of himself. It was music, but unlike any music he had ever experienced. What if we combined them? Ji-hoon said excitedly. Human instruments and Velthari resonance? We could create something completely new. Yes, Velsun agreed. We could, but not everything was going smoothly. Da-yoon sat in her lab with Krivex, and both of them looked troubled. They had been studying the energy signatures that had supposedly proven Velthari guilt in the sabotage cases. The more they looked, the more something felt wrong. These signatures are too perfect, Da-yoon said, pointing at the data. When your people manipulate electromagnetic fields, there are natural variations. Tiny fluctuations that come from individual differences. But these signatures are identical every time. It's like someone was trying to fake your work but didn't understand that it shouldn't be perfect. Krivex leaned closer to the screen. I noticed that too, but I thought maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. You're saying this is real? That the signatures were manufactured? I'm saying it's possible, Da-un replied carefully. But if that's true, it means someone deliberately framed your entire species, and they did it so well that they convinced the entire Galactic Council. Who would do that? Krivex asked. Who would benefit from exiling us? Da-un started pulling up more files. Let's find out. 3 days later, an alarm rang through Haven Colony's defense center. Admiral Sangwoo was in communication with Taemin, who was still at the Galactic Council station, when the news came through. A Galactic Council enforcement fleet just entered human space, the tactical officer reported. 20 ships. They're demanding we surrender the Velthari for immediate relocation to Kreshtar 7. Sangwoo felt his stomach drop. How long until they reach Haven? 2 days at current speed. Taemin's voice came through the communicator. They can't do this. The exile was already carried out. The Velthari left their homeworld. Apparently the council decided that wasn't enough. Sangwoo replied grimly. They want the Velthari on that dead world where they were supposed to go. This was never about justice. It was about making sure the Velthari couldn't survive. What are you going to do? Taemin asked. Sangwoo looked at the tactical display. Earth's fleet was smaller, less advanced, and spread across multiple systems. Going up against a council enforcement fleet would be suicide. But he thought about the children in Min Seo's classroom, about the breakthroughs Dong Hyun and Krivex were making, about the music Ji-hoon was creating. He thought about everything humanity had already sacrificed to do the right thing. I'm going to tell them no, Sangwoo said, and then I'm going to defend our people. All of our people. He cut the communication and turned to his staff. Get me every ship we have. Pull them from patrol duties, from exploration missions, from wherever they are. We have 2 days to prepare for a fight we can't afford to lose. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly. Even with every ship, we're outnumbered 3-1. I know, Sangwoo replied. But we're not fighting alone this time. Get Salvira up here. If the Velthari can really do what they say with our shield systems, we might just have a chance. Da-un had barely slept in 3 days. She sat in her lab surrounded by data screens with Krivex beside her going through communication logs they had managed to access. They were running out of time. The Council enforcement fleet would arrive in less than 24 hours, and they still needed concrete proof. Here, Krivex said suddenly, his crystalline form brightening with excitement. Look at this transaction. 3 days before the first sabotage event, there was a massive data transfer from a Drath company to an engineering firm in the affected system. Why would the Drath be sending technical specifications to that exact location? Da-un pulled up the file. And look at this. The same pattern repeats before each sabotage incident. Data transfers, always from Drath sources, always to the locations that were about to fail. She felt her heart racing. They weren't just framing you. They were actually causing the sabotages themselves. But why? Krivex asked. What would the Drath gain? Da-un started connecting pieces in her head. The Drath are traders. They deal in technology and information. The Velthari are the best engineers in the galaxy, but you've always been selective about who you work with. You won't sell your services to just anyone. We have standards, Krivex said. The Drath asked us multiple times to help them develop certain technologies, weapon systems mostly. We refused because we knew they would use them for conquest. So they couldn't buy your help, Da-un continued. But if you were exiled, desperate, scattered across the galaxy with no home and no protection, maybe some of you would be willing to work for anyone who offered shelter. They wanted to break your species so they could exploit you. The realization hit them both at the same time. The sabotages, the trial, the exile. It had all been a plan to destroy the Velthari as a unified people and turn them into desperate refugees who could be controlled. We need to get this to Ambassador Hyarin, Da-un said, copying the data. This is proof. This is what we need. But before they could send the message, alarms started blaring throughout Haven Colony. Da-un's communicator chimed with an emergency broadcast. It was Admiral Sangwoo's voice, tense and urgent. All personnel, this is not a drill. We have multiple Drath warships entering the system. They are not the Council enforcement fleet. I repeat, these are Drath military vessels and they are moving to attack positions. All civilians to shelters immediately. Dayun and Krivex looked at each other in horror. They know, Krivex said. They know we found the evidence and they're trying to destroy it. And us, Dayun added. On the bridge of the defense station, orbiting Haven, Admiral Sang-woo watched the tactical display with growing dread. 8 Drath warships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of the system. They weren't trying to hide their intentions. They were heading straight for Haven Colony. Status of our fleet? He asked. We have 12 ships in position, his tactical officer reported. 3 more are still en route, but they won't arrive for another 4 hours. And our upgrades? Solvera spoke from her position at a specially designed console. We've installed the enhanced shield systems on 8 of your ships. The others still have standard defenses. But Admiral, the Drath vessels are heavily armed. Even with our improvements, this will be difficult. How difficult? Sang-woo asked. Solvera's light dimmed slightly. If they focus fire on any single ship, they can overwhelm even our enhanced shields. We need to be smart about this. Captain Ji-won's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, this is the Dauntless. We're moving to intercept. Whatever the Drath are planning, we can't let them reach the colony. Sang-woo wanted to order her to fall back to preserve the fleet, but he knew she was right. If the Drath reached Haven, thousands of civilians would be at risk, both human and Velthari. All ships, form defensive line Beta 7, he ordered. Do not fire unless fired upon, but be ready. Solvera, I need you to coordinate the shield systems across all our ships. If we can link them together somehow, make them stronger. I'll do what I can, Solvera replied, her form pulsing as she began manipulating the electromagnetic fields across vast distances. On the planet's surface, Bora was trying to get civilians to the underground shelters. She was an intelligence officer, not an evacuation coordinator, but everyone was doing whatever they could. She saw Mincio herding her students, human and Velthari children holding hands as they ran for safety. Keep moving, Bora called out. Stay together. A young human boy tripped and fell. Before Bora could reach him, a Velthari child stopped and helped him up. They ran together, supporting each other. It was a small moment, but it reminded Bora why they were fighting. This was their home now. All of them. In orbit, the first shots were fired. The Drath warships opened up with plasma cannons, brilliant green bolts of energy that streaked across the darkness of space. Captain Ji-won gritted her teeth as the Dauntless shook under the impact. Shields holding at 90%, her tactical officer reported. They're regenerating faster than the damage is accumulating. Return fire, Ji-won ordered. Target their weapon systems. Let's see how they like it. The human railguns fired, tungsten projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds. But Krivex had helped them improve those too. He had shown them how to use electromagnetic fields to guide the projectiles with perfect accuracy. The shots hit exactly where they were aimed, tearing through the Drath shields and disabling weapon ports. The battle spread across the orbital space around Haven. Human ships darted and weaved, using their smaller size and better maneuverability to avoid the heavy Drath fire. And every time the Drath tried to focus fire on a single ship, Solvera redirected shield power from the others, creating a coordinated defense that the enemy hadn't expected. On one of the human fighters, young Mi pulled her craft through a tight spiral, avoiding a missile that exploded harmlessly behind her. The Velthari enhanced sensors showed her everything. Every enemy ship, every weapon charging, every trajectory. It was like she could see the future of the battle before it happened. This is incredible, she breathed, lining up her next shot. I can actually predict where they're going to be. She fired, and her missile struck a Drath ship's engine port. The enemy vessel began spinning out of control, forced to withdraw from the battle. But the Drath weren't giving up. Their largest warship, twice the size of anything humanity had, began charging its main weapon. Admiral Sang-woo watched in horror as energy readings spiked off the scale. That's a planet-killer weapon, his tactical officer said. If they fire that at Haven, nothing will survive. All ships, focus fire on that vessel, Sang-woo ordered. We have to stop them from firing. Every human ship turned toward the Drath flagship, Railguns, missiles, energy weapons, everything they had poured into that single target. But the Drath shields were too strong. The attacks splashed harmlessly against the barrier. 20 seconds until they can fire. The tactical officer counted down. 15 seconds. Solvera stood up from her console, her entire form glowing with intense light. I can stop them, she said. But I need to get close. Very close. That's suicide, Sang-woo protested. Maybe, Solvera replied. But that's my family down there. Human and Velthari both. I won't let them die. Before Sang-woo could stop her, Solvera did something none of them had thought possible. She left the station, her crystalline form surrounded by a self-generated electromagnetic field that let her survive in the vacuum of space. She flew toward the Drath flagship like a living comet. 10 seconds, the tactical officer said. Solvera reached the Drath ship and placed her form against its hull. Then she began to channel every bit of energy she could generate directly into the ship's systems. The Drath weapon started to overload, energy bleeding out in uncontrolled bursts. 5 seconds. 4, 3. The Drath flagship's weapon exploded internally. The ship didn't break apart, but it went dark, systems failing across the vessel. And in that moment of chaos, the human fleet struck. Without their flagship coordinating them, the other Drath ships faltered. One by one, they began to retreat, jumping back into faster-than-light travel. Captain Jiwon was the one who retrieved Solvera. The elderly Velthari was barely glowing when they brought her aboard. Did we win? She asked weakly. We won, Jiwon confirmed. You saved us all. Good, Solvera said. That's what family does.